If you found yourself consistently losing people for which you care for and which you love in your life, even though you do the best you could to not lose them, well, in this video, I'll show you what is the nature of care in the spiritual path, so that you can understand what care means and what is its purpose in terms of our spiritual evolution. So my friend, if you have found it hard to understand why you lose people and it's always sad for you, you experience sorrow, you experience low emotions when you lose somebody, then stay with me until the end of the video, because I'm sure it will give you much greater context in understanding of why it happens. Why it happens in such a way that you consistently lose people in your life. And how to put yourself in a situation in which you're actually grateful for some of the people you lose, because you understand that loss is inevitably impossible. So with that being said, let's get directly in the video and look at care from a metaphysical perspective. First of all, my friend, I want you to remember that it basically, it's like something that you may have already realized in your life, and that is, if you can't ultimately keep anybody in your life, because it's also their decision, it depends on them, it depends on their free will, whether they want to stay in your life or not, well then you can at least commit yourself to taking care of the people you love. Well, because you understand that if you care about others, then you actually accept the whole of yourself, which helps you become more connected with your inner truth, which is again the purpose of the spiritual path. And my friend, you might already know that basically relationships, and if you're just a little bit like me, for example, you might already know that relationships are a direct reflection of who you are inside of you unconsciously. So what you experience in the dynamics of your relationships is what you have forgotten about yourself, what you don't know about yourself, what is in your shadow, in the unconscious part of your psyche. And your relationships, in this way, they are your spiritual path. And if you learn how to care about others, even if you lose them, because sometimes this is for the greatest benefit of both parties, well, if you commit to caring for others, then the purpose of that is to become more whole within yourself, so that you can attract to yourself more deep, more intimate, more loving, and more meaningful relationships. This is again the purpose of care. If you're able to care about another, even though you may lose them, because again, it depends on their choice, it depends on their free will, whether they want to stay in your life or not. But if you care with them, no matter what happens, then you will at least be able to learn from their reflection, and for you, it wouldn't matter that you have lost them. Like for you, it's like, even if they choose to lose you, you don't choose to lose them, because you're grateful for everything that you have learned for them. But for you to be able to do that, you need to learn to care. And now let's talk a little bit more about care. What is care ultimately? Like from this more spiritual, from this more metaphysical perspective, what is care? And in this video, like in what I'll share next, is basically what I've learned from my romantic relationships, from my exploration of romantic relationships. And I've tried quite a lot of things. Like I've tried a monogamous relationship. Recently, I tried polyamoric relationships, which is a relationship which is like you have one main relationship with one partner, but both of you are free to explore other kind of relationships because you respect and love each other's freedom. So I have a little bit of experience in that, and like for me it's really important. Like this is one of my biggest values, to respect other people's free will. And I think this is like crucial for everybody if you want to develop deep, meaningful and conscious relationship and be connected to your own inner truth. So what is care in relationship? What and how it works metaphysically? First, I want you to look at this image here that I've drawn, and then we will go through like how do you actually care for another? How do you ensure that you care for another and you don't become really egocentric and narcissistic, which happens for me from time to time. This is like the biggest mistake I make sometimes. So if we look at this image, we have a lower conscious mind, obviously. Well, this is like The lower conscious mind, this is everything that we are aware of in our everyday life. So these are all the stories or the thoughts we have about ourselves, about others, about the circumstances we experience, about the situations we get in front of in life. All of this is happening in our conscious mind, in our surface level, lower conscious mind. It's lower because like the conscious mind, it's run by the unconscious mind, which is deeper. And so the unconscious mind, the unconscious shallow mind, this is what gets reflected back to us through the relationship dynamics we experience. And it's a really beautiful dynamic between how our higher self communicates with us through the conflicts we experience with other people in the relationships we pursue. We will look at this in a moment, but before that, let's again understand something really important about the lower conscious mind. Well, it has an advantage that you're conscious in it, like you're conscious of its contents, but you're not conscious of what gives it power. Because what gives power to the contents of the conscious mind, well, this is your unconscious shadow. These are the parts of you of which you're not aware of. And with the purpose of care, with the power of care, you can become aware of the unconscious aspects of you so that you can integrate them back into awareness and become a more full, whole, complete version of yourself. And then experience the exact relationships you want to experience. So here's how this dynamic works. Let's assume that this green character, this is you. This is what you're aware of. This is your mind and body. And so when you have interactions with other people and when you experience something that you don't like, something that triggers you, something that the other person perceives as not caring or like not acceptable, and he judges you for that and he blames you, or like anytime you're triggered, anytime you experience any form of negative feeling, what happens is that your higher self communicates with you through the reflection of the other person. So it's like in your conscious mind you don't know that, but in your unconscious shallow mind, well, since you become triggered, something within you gets triggered, and in your conscious mind, what you'll be aware of is like these prideful thoughts that you are right, the other is wrong, he's the one to blame, he should change, you did everything you could, and there is no responsibility that you hold. These are the thoughts that you have in your conscious mind. You're conscious of them, but now let's look at the bigger picture again. If you get triggered, if some part of you gets triggered, this is your unconscious shadow. And so your higher self tries to communicate with you through the reflection of the other person, because from this higher perspective, like we're all one. There is no difference. You're not different from me. We have the same consciousness, the same awareness, the same eye that looks through our eyes and perceives. So our higher self is aware of that. It's his experience. And so he gives a reflection. He uses his power, his metaphysical power, to attract a reflection to your life. That reflection is the other person, the other self that you experience, that you have some conflict with. And then your conscious mind experiences some form of frustration, some form of trigger, and it doesn't know what it is, because what is triggered is in your unconscious mind. So your higher self is trying to show back to your conscious mind what was unconscious, so that it becomes conscious again. And this is how the higher self communicates with you. And it's like, it happens through feelings. It doesn't happen so much through like thoughts or images, it happens through feelings. Because the feeling you experience anytime you're triggered, anytime, let's say, you're losing somebody in a relationship that you really wanted to develop further, but it reaches its end and like you're really sad, you feel sorrow, you feel woe because you see how you can lose that person. Well, if you accept that feeling of loss, inside this feeling, you will see the unconscious shadow that now becomes conscious. So you see the lesson in the unconscious shadow that becomes conscious. And for you to be able to do that, well, you need to have sympathy, which is again where the power of care comes. Because if you don't have sympathy for the other's experience, if you just, let's say, focus on your experience and stay in your lower conscious mind, then you wouldn't be able to be aware of the higher self reflection, of the reflection that your higher self is giving you through the presence of the other person, and with all the triggers that you experience in your interaction with them. If you don't have sympathy, you won't be able to perceive that information. So this is why care is so important. This is why this is the purpose of care in our spiritual path, in our spiritual evolution. Because if we don't care for others, we are not able to communicate with our higher self in the dynamics of our relationships. But let's say if we care for others, and if you at least care for our feelings and we become present with them, then we have sympathy for the other person's experience, for our special person's experience. And then this sympathy gets back to us in the form of warning. So we learn from their experience what was unconscious in our experience. And we become a whole, a more fuller version of ourselves. Does this make sense? Or is it a little bit too abstract? Let me know in the comments below and I'll try to explain more descriptively, maybe in another video. So this is what happens, and it's really important, it's really beautiful to understand that, because if you understand this dynamic, two things happen. First of all, you want to become more caring and more sympathetic to others naturally, because you understand this is for your own benefit. Like sometimes you might sacrifice yourself, sometimes you might compromise some of your values to become really present and to listen to the other person's needs and to like what you disrespected in him, in his experience, not in yours, because in your experience you're always right, of course. This is how it looks like to our conscious mind, but this is never the case. This is never the big picture. The big picture is that you have a point of view in a conflicting situation, the other person has a point of view, the other person acts as a reflection of the unconscious part of you, and if you don't accept the other person's points of view, well, then you generally can't accept the unconscious part of yourself, your unconscious shadow. So you're like diminishing, you're blocking yourself in your own spiritual path. And like if you don't care for others, well, it's like you don't care for your own spiritual evolution. It makes sense, right? Because if you don't care for others, if you don't sympathize them, because those are the people you love, you say you love, and if you don't sympathize to them, well, you wouldn't be able to learn from their reflection. Or you might be able to learn, but it will be when you have already lost them inside that relationship, and the lesson has to repeat once again, and you attract the same person, and you experience the same catalyst. Catalyst is like, this is again like the experience that you need to go through to learn some form of spiritual lesson. This is what catalyst is. So if you don't care this time, and if you don't become sympathetic this time, well, you attract another relationship dynamic which will be the same type of relationship dynamic until you learn that lesson. Because it's your higher self trying to show you your unconscious shadow mind back to your lower conscious mind, so it becomes higher, and then it's like your unconscious and conscious minds, they integrate into your higher consciousness, and you become in connection with your higher self, in direct communication with your higher self. It makes sense, right? This is what you get back. This is the warning again. And you can only experience the warning in the dynamics of that relationships if you care about the other person. If you don't care about the other person, well, you lose them. And if you lose them, you repeat the same pattern again in another relationship. And you have another chance to learn the same lesson again. I'll give you an example for me, like for what I've experienced just recently in this polyamoric relationship that I'm pursuing. My partner, she had a dream that she was pursuing for 14 years, and eventually she gave up on that dream. And like anytime she saw somebody else who was pursuing her same kind of dream, she felt really triggered, she felt really sad, she felt disappointed of herself. It was a really big thing for her. And let's say it's not such a big thing for me, because even though I'm not the fastest in pursuing and following my dreams, I still commit to them, and like I know I wouldn't give up. So I wasn't sympathetic at this moment. I wasn't experiencing sympathy. I wasn't showing her sympathy to when she was triggered, when she was communicating that. And so she felt really triggered, because like we were in this really really deep, intimate relationships, and I, as her partner, don't really care for her experience. It was a huge trigger for her. So she closed off for a while. And when she closed off, it was like, okay, at first I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know that my higher self was communicating my unconscious shadow. And my unconscious shadow here is that sometimes when I lose my purpose, when I lose my following my dream in my life, like when I lose what is meaningful in my life, I become really apathetic, and I become attached to this really apathetic thoughts, and like life is meaningless, so on and so forth. And it's because sometimes I'm not being respectful of my own ability to give up on my dreams, which is again what was being reflected through her reflection. She was showing me that she was feeling really sad, really triggered because she gave up on her dream, because sometimes I do give up on my dreams, and that's what I told you in the beginning, I'm not as consistent as I could be. And she was giving me that reflection from my unconscious mind back to the conscious mind. And since I didn't sympathize at this moment, we became, we gave ourselves a little bit of time and space. We became a little bit apart. So because I didn't warn that reflection. But through the feelings that I felt of losing her, I was able to recall that lesson and to recall my higher self communicating my unconscious mind back to my conscious mind, so that I can see that sometimes I also give up on my dreams, but I don't want to accept it. And when I don't accept it, I become apathetic. And so when that happens, it's like I'm just losing all meaning in life, and I don't do anything. So it's like it's not in my benefit also. She was showing me that through her reflection. And so anyway, like this is just an example of how that works. I wouldn't have been able to see that pattern of why I become apathetic from time to time if it wasn't for her reflection and if I didn't care for her. In the example I'm giving you, I didn't care for her at the same moment, like when she was experiencing this trigger, but in the next couple of days I understood her experience. I really connected to it. I sympathized to it. And when I sympathized to it, like this is her experience, then the warning came. And when the warning came, it's like, okay, well, even though she's like still a little closed off and still a little frustrated, I can understand her. Because it's like, it really was me who was not responsible at this stage to learn what I needed to learn from her reflection. So does it make sense with this story, with this example I gave you? And how does it relate? How does that relate to your experience? Like, how can you use the power of care? Because you understand it is in this metaphysical perspective, you understand its nature. How can you use the power of care to become more closely connected with your higher self? Again, this is the purpose here. So if you relate this to your experience, how you can become more caring? And if you become more caring, what do you need to learn from your special person reflection that he's giving back to you? These are some of the questions you can contemplate if you find this useful. And now let's look at how this is possible. Like, okay, if we were to start caring for other people and sympathize for their experience, how is that possible? Well, there are a couple of like rules. We could say that there are rules. So first of all, it's like accepting another's experience as if it were yours. Now let us remember again, ultimately there is no difference between me and you. We share the same awareness. I am the same I as you who is listening. It's the same I, you it's basically the same. It's the same awareness. You're aware, I'm aware. Both of us are aware. So if you accept another's experience as if it were ours, well, this is what care is. This is how it looks practically. And now if we go a little deeper, what does it mean to accept another's experience as if it were yours? It means that you need to validate all correlated beliefs, feelings, and behavioral patterns as being valid and respecting them for what they are with sympathy. If you're able to accept and to validate the other person's beliefs, feelings, and behavioral patterns, and validate them as if they are valid, as if they are valid expressions of reality, because if they happen, they're obviously valid, right? Like, how else could they happen? Somebody, something, some higher power gave them the authority to exist, so they are valid. And if you accept them as valid, you can experience them in your own mind-body experience. Because it's the same, again, it's the same I. You just through empathy, through compassion, you experience what the other person is experiencing. And this way, you're able to learn from his experience what you were not able to know about your unconscious shadow. And this is how your unconscious shadow becomes conscious. So, yeah, this is like the second rule. It includes validating correlated beliefs, feelings, and behavioral patterns. And if you were to do that in your relationship with somebody you have lost in your life, you go through this transformational experience in which you naturally see how the feelings of loss evaporate and transform into the feelings of gratefulness. Because if you see what you are able to learn from this other person about yourself, you cannot feel loss anymore. You feel gratitude because you see them as the perfect lesson for you. You see them as a gift, as a gift that your higher self, the universe, gave you so that you can become more fully yourself. Makes sense, right? So, okay, and if you were to do that, this allows you to get to know your unconscious shadow being reflected through the other back to your conscious mind, so that you can become more whole, full, and complete within yourself. And again, this is the purpose, because you can't ultimately keep anybody in your life, because at the end, it depends on them whether they want to stay in your life or not. They have the free will to choose, and it also depends on them. So, if that were true, you can at least commit yourself to taking care of the people you love, so that you can accept the whole of you more fully. And this, my friend, is the metaphysical, spiritual nature of care in your spiritual evolution and in your spiritual path. Let me know if you found this video to be useful, to be helpful, if you gave you a bigger, broader perspective, if it makes sense, most importantly. And if you like it, hit the like button, comment down below your opinions. I would love to make a discussion on this topic. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye for now, and enjoy your day. Love you.